Hi, in this first episode of my Earthquake, I'm going to talk about COVID-19. So I'm not going to address the usual issues that are spoken regarding this virus, it's like the discussing of its origin and so on. No, I'm going to try to place only some few notes, one or two notes that I find very important for us to think about it, especially now since we are beginning to live in the post-COVID world. And I believe it's the type of question that we must place and begin to think right now. That's my opinion. Okay, so I'll see you in a few seconds if you don't mind. So here again. So the reason why I don't want to talk very much, at least in this episode, regarding the origin of the virus of COVID-19 is because I think at this moment it's a little bit irrelevant, or it's quite irrelevant indeed, or useful to know where it came from, if it was a deliberate action, if it was an accident, if it was a country, if it was an individual, if it was a group, if it was nature having some kind of payback, if it was God. But honestly, at this precise moment, I don't believe it's very useful. Neither is have countries or institutions blaming themselves. Uh, I believe that at this moment, what we need is to control the virus and solve this issue, this solution. We already have had several situations in our past that were very complicated and require that all the countries united and join. And I'm not seeing this that actually in the case of COVID-19. I don't see the European countries or the US or Australia, or I don't see any conjoint force to form a front of battle against this threat. Honestly, I don't quite understand why. Either way, I believe it's a little bit irrelevant, and it doesn't solve anything to know who is responsible, or who is to blame and prosecuted. No, at the moment I don't believe it. I would find it very interesting and very important to know who is, for instance, patient zero. That, yes, would speed up a possible vaccine, to speed up things, and probably it would allow for us to make some sort of temporary medication that could ease up a little bit the symptoms and the pain, and then the discomfort that people that are at this moment in ICU, for instance, and connected to ventilators. That would be that would be important. Discussing at the present moment who is responsible or what is responsible, it's not going to help. Actually, to be honest, I believe that the people that at this moment are more worried in finding possible blames and possible documents that could blame other countries, or etc., should be doing something, even help to make masks, for instance. But that's just my opinion. So yeah, I spoke in the beginning of the video that I would like to place just one or two notes regarding COVID, that I believe personally to be important. uh, Actually, this idea, which is a very basic idea, came up when I tried to remember how was the year of 2019. Was it a peaceful year? Was it a quiet year? Was it a different year? Was it a worthy year? If we remove, of course, the final part of the year in one. Yeah, and actually, I reached a conclusion that it was a very special year in several issues, and it was a very violent and complicated year in other parts. So I'm going to place just here some image that have to do with the good part that I think came up in 2019. We are watching terrible images, unfortunately, of the fires that happened in Australia and Amazon. In Australia, we lost people, we lost firefighters, people who fought the fires for days and days and days after days. There's an estimation that we lost about 1 million mammals and birds and reptiles. Australia has, I believe, 244 species that only live in Australia. We are not sure if one or two or three are extinct at the moment we speak. In Amazon, which we consider the lungs of the world, the loss was also unbelievable. In Australia, the area that burned was about the size of South Korea. So we are speaking 25 million acres. Amazon was also terrible. Here we are looking at photos. These people are not going out of a fire. This is air pollution in the main cities of India. Okay, this is completely unbelievable, and I believe we are going to see a photo next that is a bear that probably is thinking, what the hell am I going to do with my life? Here it is, since the defrosting in Antarctica and other places continues. And we have also other situations, humanitarian situations like this, which is the refugees of Syria that are in no one's land. They have no roots in, in no place, and they basically are lost and have basically nothing. So, but why did I show these images? Because these images allied to one special little young girl, a Swedish girl named Greta Thunberg. That girl was discovered by the media, and when she began to speak to the television and other channels, suddenly she became the inspiration of several thousands of people. And in a matter of months, what we realized was that people actually began to care about the environment, about the climate problem. There are many politicians, especially in the States, that don't believe in climate change, that don't believe that in the defrost of the poles, that don't believe in several things. Honestly, I'm not going to debate that problem also here, because it's that I think there's no argument again, pure stupidity. But either way, with Greta, that is inspiration, and these catastrophes that happen, people decided to go out to the streets and protest. They began to demonstrate that they were not happy, that indeed the climate was in danger, and they began to demand. They began to demand, and very well, to address this question, because when we speak in climate change, when we speak in resources, we are speaking in years. Not we don't have 1 century. No, we have what, 10, 15 years, 20 years, 25. No one is completely sure. So those people began to go out to the streets and to protest, and that was good. That was very good, and basically it began to happen all around the world, thousands and thousands, and not only young people like Greta, but older people. So I believe that was completely different in 2019. And I never saw such a phenomenon in the last years. The the other problem was also other parts they began to rise and to stand up and go to the street, but those were different questions. Those were questions that led unfortunately to violence, like the Holocaust, for instance, in France, like the problems in Hong Kong that they result in deaths, human deaths, unfortunately, and other cases in Venezuela, Chile, and I can't pass. I'm going to pass a little summary from the CNN that speaks that makes a resume about those main events. So I'm going to pass this if you don't mind, and we'll be back in a few minutes. Okay, I'll see you then.
Across the globe, 2019 has been a year of major protests. Demonstrations erupted over corruption, taxes, the climate, and much more, marking what experts say was a tipping point of ordinary people fed up with measures imposed by a ruling elite. From Paris to Hong Kong, Venezuela to Algeria, an outpouring of anger raged across nearly every continent, with millions rallying against their governments to tell their leaders this isn't good enough. Take the Yellow Vest movement in France, an explosive start to the year. Tens of thousands of angry protesters put on their gilets jaunes and hit the streets.
Parce qu'on en a ras-le-bol d'être mené par le bout du nez par un pouvoir méprisant.
What started out as dissent over a rise in a fuel tax in late 2018 gradually morphed into a broader campaign against French President Emmanuel Macron. But Macron has managed to maintain his premiership. Leaders in other countries didn't. In February, a financial crisis and widespread fatigue at the decades-long rule of President Abdelaziz Bouteflika sparked Algeria's biggest protests in more than 20 years. Within a matter of weeks, the old regime was gone. But that wasn't enough for Algerians, who carried on marching for months, calling for sweeping government reforms. And in Hong Kong, peaceful marches started in March over a controversial extradition bill. By summer, escalated into the city's biggest political crisis in modern times, lifting the lid on frustrations and a lack of full autonomy going back decades.
They say it's a fight for the future of Hong Kong, a fight that has grown increasingly violent, a fight that has continued to escalate.
Week after week, month after month, pro-democracy, anti-government protests rocked the semi-autonomous city, leading to thousands of arrests and constant clashes between police and protesters. Withdrawing the bill wasn't enough to stop demonstrators' battle for greater democracy and quell what has become one of the most defining movements of the year. Democracy was also on the lips of protesters in Venezuela. At the end of April, the country seemed to be on the verge of a historic military and civilian uprising against the Maduro regime. Frustrated over the country's years-long slide into hyperinflation and government corruption, angry protesters had been taking to the streets for months, backing young opposition leader Juan Guaidó and his calls for democratic change. But the months of protests largely gave way after a failed coup. In other countries, marches were contained to a one-day event. During the annual May Day protests, millions of Cubans took to the streets in a government-organized event to protest U.S. sanctions imposed on the island and its neighbors.
Cuba es de los cubanos que vivimos aquí, porque esta Cuba la hemos construido nosotros, no los cubanos que están afuera.
And Cubans were not the only ones protesting a foreign power. In June, U.S. President Donald Trump's official visit to London was greeted with mocking effigies and streets filled with thousands of peaceful protesters.
Well, I'm going to interrupt here because this lasts a little bit longer, and that would turn this episode too long. Well, as you can see, in fact, there was several movements and several protests that became very, very violent. I believe that some groups lost their reason they resort to violence because yes, there's a part of the police that has some parts of guilt, but there are and we can see if we watch very careful some the footages that the televisions catch, we can see several groups that seem to be there only to get and generate trouble. Okay, so basically most part of the people just want to protest and then show what it wants to defend the principles, and there are those kind of groups that just want to generate the violence and confusion. And I honestly I'm not going also to talk about it in this episode. So this was all over the world. That was really a very rich year in protests, manifestations of several issues, from civil rights, from legal issues, to Hong Kong. Started basically with a request for a law not to pass, and basically ended in a fight for freedom and for free speech and that kind of thing. So I think that people reach some type of limit in 2019, and that led people to protest, to go to the street and to tell no more. Okay, we want changes. We want that government saying changes. We want that the government cares about us, and all of this generated a very unstable world. The world was basically unstable. There was no equilibrium. There was manifestations basically all day. So this generated a very confused year until basically November, and that's when all the magic, let's call it, no, it's not magic, but almost. Since COVID-19 appeared, it was reported in the end of the year of 2019. Since COVID-19 was reported to WHO and began to spread, these movements, of course, retreated, and basically the world stopped with COVID-19. Okay, this is pretty easy to understand why, because from the moment that the virus began to spread very quickly, there's a first note. One of the reasons that the virus spread so fast and was able to reach several parts of the world very quickly is because the technology worked against us, because we have an excellent network of transportation all over the world. Okay, we can be here today and in China in a few hours, or be in China and a few hours be in the States or in Australia or in Norway. So we have a very good system of transportation system all over the world. Okay, not only the airplanes but also the trains, the trucks, everything. So basically we were carriers of the virus, and so the virus spread in a question of 1-2 months. It was all over the place, and when we looked, Italy and Spain were already in the state of the pandemic and epidemic, completely almost uncontrolled. So it was very, very, very fast. So that, yes, the technology worked against it, but basically when we saw that, yes, the first measure was to get off the airlines, so that the infection wouldn't spread beyond frontiers. The second was to ask the social distance, which should be called physical distance. I'll explain that also in another episode. But the final one, when we saw that nothing was working, was basically the confinement of all the people in their homes. So if I'm infected and I don't go out, or I go out only to go to a pharmacy and to the grocery, the probability of me infecting someone is, I wouldn't say zero, but pretty near zero. So that this confinement, that is, it's very hard to endure, and there are people that are not dealing very well with it. It's the only way at the moment to contain the virus, let's say. But since the moment that we contain the virus in this way, we contain also the protests, the manifestations, because the people cannot go out, and the people cannot gather in groups of more than 10 or 5 or 100 or whatever number we might decide. People just cannot protest. So everything that was happening, all of these protests, right or wrong, doesn't matter, they were all postponed, and they were postponed for dates that we honestly cannot say when they can be resumed, because we speak, for instance, of vaccine, and actually there are two terms that I'm a little bit tired of hearing every day. One is COVID-19, and the other is vaccine, an universal vaccine, a fantastic vaccine. I'm beginning to be a little tired of these two terms every single day. But either way, since this confinement was necessary, and it was the only way to contain it, to stop the spread, and it worked in several countries, or at least it's working. Okay, everything was postponed. So in some way, COVID-19, yes, it stopped the world, and it stopped and confined every single person that was protesting at home. COVID-19 was able to do in a matter of 1 month or 2 months. Let's say if we speak globally, okay, was able to do what the police and the army and the diplomacy and with all its resources of the countries weren't able to do in the negotiation table, either with the yellow coats, either with in Hong Kong, either with the climate changers, the protesters. Actually, it was quite efficient. It all stopped. It controlled basically everything. It placed everything in order. Cities began and started to be like this. Okay. So while I was thinking in 2019, and I started to understand that 2019 was the last thing that was a normal year. It was not normal. I also began to look at these images, and I realized suddenly that the COVID-19 has a very frightening type of power that is basically it's controlling the world at this moment. We are hostages of the virus. We cannot. We basically it's the virus that controls the situation, that decides what we can or what we can't do. So we don't establish the pace to the disease. It's the disease that controls what we do and when we do and how can we do. So I wonder if there's if no politician in all these months that we gone through noticed that this is the type of situation that an evil mind or someone that wants to take control of a region, of a country, of an area, or even the world, if we think about it, if someone wanted to take advantage of this type of situation that COVID is freely offering, that would be very bad for mankind, in my opinion. So the question that I placed myself is, looking at the, the actual leaders, and when I speak leaders, I speak politicians, religious leaders, economic lobbies. I'm speaking so in persons or entities or organizations that have strength, that have some sort of power or influence in this world at several levels. I wonder if all of them are going to look to the advantage, to the power that COVID-19 gives and provides every day. That it's basically a control that if we were to try with the military, we probably wouldn't be able to pull off. And I'm wondering if all of these organizations, all of these leaders, all of these people is going to act that selfish. Okay, they are going to say no, no. The problem is to solve the population problem. The solution, what we must do is save the lives, especially the elders that are dying because of other complications that they have, or people younger that have comorbidity problems like diabetes and others. So are they going to think like this, or are they going to look at this twice and wonder, what if I was to gather this, manipulate this, extend this, and take some kind of profit and advantage of this? So the question is, am I 100% confident that no one will try to use this free power to, for instance, use it to go against our civil rights, for instance? Because let's think it through, okay? Let's imagine that this menace maintains. It's going to maintain for several months, years. We don't know it at the moment. Wouldn't that give some type of legal and justified and scientific justifiable reason for our individual civil rights be violated if there's the possibility of a menace? Let's see. Let's try to think that I want to make a trip, for instance, in about 6 months. Things are more or less normal. I want to make a trip to, let's say, Italy, that was badly hurt. Will the airlines look at me, or will the people, the Italians, look at me with the same eyes, with the same trust that they would look if I made that trip 1 year or 2 years ago, for instance? And now let's not only talk about airlines, let's talk about coffee shops, restaurants, football games, cinemas, everything. So COVID-19 has the power over basically everything. And if the menace is to be maintained in a real way or not, because, okay, the virus is real, okay, but let's say that the virus can be contained, but it's not contained at 100% because there's some lobby or some kind of politician that decides to use this power that the virus is given to their benefit. Can't I be approached, for instance, if I'm making a trip in a subway or in the car or in a train or in an airplane, by the police, for instance? Won't they be able to do, if there's again a justifiable scientific reason and menace for the health, to enter in my home and make the tests that they want? And if they decided that I can be a menace to take me or my family from here, won't they be able to do that also in a check-in or the checkout point? If all goes well, okay, we will fight, we will control the virus. No vaccine or no 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 how do I say, no lobbyist solution will control nothing, because it will be a universal problem that will be solved universally by all the nations, okay? This is the ideal. But believing that someone might take advantage of this, and someone can be a group of several people, this situation can be maintained for several months or several years, and we can, without understanding at first, see our civil rights violated in every way. But for, in one hand, understanding why, because yes, okay, there's a virus out there. If I look at my neighbor with some mistrust, because I think he or her can be infected, okay, the government has the right to act like that, okay, because I'm giving that power, because the menace, I believe the menace is out there, okay. So this is, for me, basically a problem. And personally, no, I don't trust 100% in the politicians, or the religious leaders, or the economic lobbies, like pharmaceutical one. And no, I honestly don't believe, and I would like very much to know if you do. So yeah, can we do something about it? Yes, I believe. I believe we last year we showed one thing. We showed that we are indeed the base of the society, because if we, the workers, we, that this is not a political conversation, but we that work, all of us, we sustain the economy of the world, we sustain everything, okay. So we have a vote on a matter. We elected the people that are in the power, right? They are our representatives, okay. So this is but I believe that the only thing that we can do is, first of all, is cooperate, okay, because we are trying to arrange a solution here. And if we cannot do that, because we believe that this is all BS and it's all lie, etc. Okay, you don't want to be part of the solution, try not to be part of the problem, okay. So first we must, in my opinion, my humble opinion, is cooperate with everything, okay, with the authorities, with the confinements, with the states of emergency, okay. We must do that. But at the same time, okay, we must do a thing that probably most of us don't do because are tired. I personally don't like to watch the news, for instance, every day, because they are always gloom and doom, and they are terrible, and everything goes wrong, even before COVID-19, okay? But not anymore, okay? At the moment, I try to see at least once, half an hour, okay, I try to see what is happening in the world. What are the governments making? What is happening in the states? What is happening in Europe? What is our government saying is and doing? What are the numbers? What is happening economically? I'm not an expert, but I like to try to understand. What I'm trying to be is alert, aware, okay. I'm trying to be aware of what's happening, what might be all the consequences of the decisions that are spoken in the news, okay. And I try to filter, because even if the news sometimes seem that they are not completely neutral, okay, I try to abstract from that. I catch the news itself, the raw, okay, and I try to see what consequence can this new news have regarding this point we were discussing here, okay. And this, my friends, in my opinion, is the only thing we can do for now. It's be very alert, very aware, Okay, we can speak with each other again. Okay, I spoke that I don't believe in social distance. Okay, there that's a wrong word. We should speak about physical distance. Okay, because I can be forced to be, I don't know, a meter, 2 meters, 3 meters from someone to not be infected, okay? But I can pick up a phone and speak with a person. I can Skype it. I can, in Italy, there were persons that were screaming from balcony to balcony or singing to speak with each other, okay? So one thing is social distance and the other thing is physical distance. So we can and still can by the net, with Skype, with the phone, whatever, we can speak with each other. So we can be alert and aware and discuss this type of things together. Okay. So I believe this is the way. This is the solution for now. First, cooperate, okay? Not every government wants to take advantage of such a pandemic, and such a horrible thing. There are good people, there are very good people in this planet, okay? I didn't lost my hope. But be alert, be aware, listen, okay? Discuss. You have doubts, ask. I believe that's the only thing we can do. And I believe also that we are going to beat this, and the outcome is not going to be what any person that wants to take profit of this. I don't know what profit, but honestly, it doesn't matter. I believe that we will prevail as always, and we will control the situation because there's no need for blaming. There's no need for violence, in my opinion. This can be solved in many other ways. Do not forget that we have about 10 million doctors, okay, in this planet. Okay, 20% might be corrupt. The other 80 are not. 8 million, okay? And we are not speaking about the nurses that are, I don't know what, how many millions, okay? And then there are us, there are the engineers, there are the professors, there are a quantity of good people in this world, okay? So we will fight this, we will win this, okay? And we will not allow in any way that the outcome will be different than an unselfish solution for that, because this is a world problem. This is not uh, a war for gaining control in a country or in a region or in an island or in the moon. I don't know. I don't believe that. Okay, so I hope you enjoy it. If you enjoy the this first episode, I would like to ask you and invite you to subscribe. I will try to make another episode in about a week. I apologize if anything went wrong, but as I said, it's my first episode. It's my first time. So again, I thank you very much for watching. Okay, and clear skies. Okay, thanks.